Hi there, my name is Stella O'Malley, and I'm a psychotherapist based in Offaly. And the title of this presentation is about anxious children in an anxious world, and it's quite notable to me as a psychotherapist who's met parents and adolescents for many years now, that some people come out of the womb quite anxious. Some people come out of the womb with a great gift for happiness. Some people come out of the womb with great work ethic. There is a certain level of kind of innate traits that we are working with, and it's quite noticeable that some people are anxious, and we need to work with that, because anxiety can mean that you're very competent, that you make sure you cross the dot, you cross the t's, you dot the i's, you do good work. And yet, if it gets too difficult, especially in a heightened world that we're living in now, you can tip into over anxiety, you can tip into proper anxiety, where it's actually a hindrance in your life. There's a few pieces of work that I've done over the years. And Fragile, my book that came out in 2019, is all about anxiety and the mechanics of anxiety, how the brain works when it's anxious, and how it interacts with an anxious world. And I would recommend it for anybody who does have anxious children. People need to be aware, because Eric Erickson did this years ago. It's a really well established psychosocial, stages of development. And the first year of our life, all of us, every one of us, when we come out of the womb, the first year we're trying to figure out, is it friend or foe? Have we arrived in a hostile or a friendly land? And then if your nappies change, if you're fed, if you are watered as such, you can believe that you can trust the world. And if you don't, that's where the attachment issues might happen, for people who didn't really get their needs met in an extreme way in that first year. Then you go on to the next stage, where you're trying to figure out, what can I do on my own? And it's amazing, really, that suddenly they realize, I'm separate to my caregiver, and that's why the child might suddenly start running out of the supermarket with a kind of sense of freedom and liberation, that they can do something on their own. And so that's that stage. It goes on then, and they're thinking, what am I good? Am I a good person or am I bad? They all want to be a good girl and a good boy. And that's where we give them a lot of kind of reassurance that they're a good girl, and we find out opportunities to tell them they're a good boy. Then a very crucial stage for children who are anxious is kind of from about 6 up until puberty, where they're very, very trying to figure out, what am I good at? Am I competent? Am I worthless? Crucial stage for anybody who might have dyslexia or learning difficulties or ADHD, where they might find in the school setting that they're not thriving. They can lose confidence, and it can mark them for a long, long time for life. Now, they can also have empathy and kindness and sensitivity and lots of other things as a result of it. So it's not necessarily a dreadful event, but it can certainly shape them. And this is where you make sure that children between the age of 6 and maybe puberty, that they find something they're good at. It might be art, it might be Lego, it might be problem solving, it might be people skills. You find them what they're good at. You, as the loving parent who's engaged, because they mightn't find anything themselves, and they could lose a lot of confidence in themselves. Then it goes on into adolescence, where they're trying to find their own identity, into early adulthood, where you're looking for the great relationship, the love, the one. And then into where I'm at, which is middle adulthood, where you're trying to think, what's my work for? Am I producing anything? Have I a purpose? And then later on, all looking forward to us, please God, late adulthood, will we have lived a fulfilled life? Not only is there the stages that we're all going through, but there's also, we all have emotional needs. Some of us have physical needs. We all have physical needs, and if you don't get food, you get well, I get hungry. If I don't get sleep, I get weepy. We all need to drink a certain level of water, and other drinks or whatever. And the same goes for the needs. We have these needs, and some people have a high need and some people have a low need. And the more you can be aware of the needs your child might have, the more you can really be tuned into what they need. A person with a high need for love and belonging, they want to feel part of the group. They want to feel part of the club, feel part of the family. Let's all do this together. They want everybody to do things together. That child needs lots of groups of friends, lots of little clubs to go to, lots of feelings where they feel remember that TV program, Cheers, where everybody knows your name? You want to go where everybody knows your name. That child needs a lot of that connection. And make sure that they might cling on to two friends because that's where they feel most connected and belonging. Make sure there are other opportunities because inevitably these friendships falter and that child can feel torn asunder because that intense friendship is gone. Make sure you, as the project manager, as the parent, are on it and realize I'm going to keep building the relationship with the cousin, even though they've forgotten about the cousin and they're all about their two best friends, because one day they might need that feeling of somebody who knows them. Then the child who's a high need for security and safety, that child will have a lot of questions. What time are you collect me at? What time are we going to the match? When are we going? What are we going to have to eat? What are we doing after that? They need a plan, they need to know, and they'll ask you lots of questions. More and more, if you can answer the questions and then say, and I'm going to ask you the questions, make sure you know it. They don't want that. They want to ask you questions because you're their security blanket, but you're trying to feed within them the ability to reassure themselves so that they're their own security blanket. Slowly, compassionately, gently, but you're trying to say, so what time am I collecting yet? What time are we going, wherever, or what are we going to do then? And they start realizing that they do know and they don't need to ask you a million questions. They might also ask, am I good at this? Am I good at that? And you might try to teach them to self evaluate. What do you think? What's your opinion? What's your view? They don't really, those children who have a high need for security and safety, they don't really want to self evaluate. They want to give their power away, and you're trying to nurture within them. It's okay. Yeah, I am good. Yeah, I can do it. And like I say, give yourself some time to do that. That won't come immediately. The child who has a high need for freedom or autonomy, that child won't really suffer from anxiety the way the security or safety child. That kid needs their own rules to do their own thing, doesn't thrive in school, is kind of a different type of child. But the child who has a high need for status, value, recognition from others, they want to do very well. They can be very anxious because they want to feel they're achieving all the time. And you need to be aware of their need for that and cool it with them. Play around with what is success. Is it successful if you cried your eyes out before the match? You didn't enjoy the match, but then you won. Or is it success if you had a great time and you really bonded and you did fine and you were good enough, which is success? In life, what is success? And maybe share with them, I had a really good day, but I didn't do well, but I had a good day. And another day you say, I really stressed myself out, caused myself an awful lot of stress, but I did do well. So that they realize there's nuances to success and there's shades of understanding of what makes a good day and what makes a good event. Because somebody who has a high need for status, they can become incredibly intense about whether they're good at things, and you're trying to loosen it a little bit so that they learn to enjoy life and not be so anxious about success. High need for fun challenge, they can become quite nervous because they're constantly looking for something new, looking, go, 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 more challenges, more new, and it's kind of a hyper energy from them. They might need to learn to breathe, they might need to learn yoga, they might need to learn to slow down, and it won't come easy to them because they're trying to kind of go fast all the time, fast, 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 fast. And they might just, even swimming, things like that, where it's kind of a slower, more zen-like vibe that you make sure to nurture more sides to them than the side that they want to nurture, because the child will be driven to nurture the one side, and you as the parent, the project manager, might be nurturing other sides. So it's important to spot triggers in your child's time. Some children get very anxious with unstructured time. Funnily enough, some children get very anxious with too much busy time, too much structured time. So you need to know your own child. Too many demands can be very anxious making. Certain situations, social occasions, parties are a big one for anxiety. Sensory issues, as you might know, their smell, their taste, their touch. And as it says there, they might have a bad sleep, they might have a bad start to the day, they might go into school, they might, get on very well, exhaustion, worry, bad sleep, and the cycle goes on and on and on. And it's our job as the parents to realize, actually, I need to kick on in this. This is turning into a cycle as opposed to just a couple of days or a couple of weeks. So it's quite important, not that you have to read all that, but basically, well, I'll read it through it, but your brain and your body kicks off when you're stressed. And the more the parent realizes that, they realize there's a lot going on in this child who's freaking out because they won't go into the party because they're stressed. The adrenal glands are releasing adrenaline and cortisol. The adrenaline is releasing the fight or flight. So they're suddenly, they want to fight you or they want to run. The cortisol is releasing long lasting stress responses. They might have a sore belly. They might have a tension headache. The body feels tingly. They feel all kind of restless. There's clammy hands, sweaty. Heart is beating. The blood pressure is rising. The blood from the logic center gets drained. It goes straight into your emotional brain so that they're completely and utterly in a kind of a brain drain of I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And they're black and white thinking at this stage. And the amygdala is trying to figure out, will I run? Will I fight? What will I do quickly? And then you, the parent, are trying to penetrate into that and try to see if you can kind of bring them down. Slow breathing can be really, really helpful. Knowing the signs before they get into that state is much more helpful. Kind of preemptive strike, like you did when they were toddlers, and you realize they're going to get really, really ratty and have a meltdown soon if I don't get them home or into a quiet place. You do the same with the older children. You realize actually they've had so much unstructured time recently, they're going to have a meltdown if I don't bring some structure into their life, or vice versa. They're too busy, they need some downtime. So they might feel hot, they might feel itchy, their face might get red. If you can know the signs, you can teach them the signs. HALT is a great acronym: hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. They might have physical symptoms. An awful lot of children have physical symptoms like headaches, digestive complaints, clammy hands, raised voice. They might feel overwhelmed. They might get aggressive or violent. They might need quiet. And that's you as the parent looking like a scientist, realizing they're getting overwrought, they're getting over anxious. We're living in a very anxious world where stress and news is always coming at them. The TV, the screens, it's too much stimulation. And some children, especially children who are quite anxious, they're the children who might need the quiet time, where you send them up to their room to clean their room, and you know that by going up there, they'll be quiet. They might clean the room very well, but they will have some quiet time, and it's very important. So just to finish off, I want to point out that sometimes life goes wrong. And it might feel very satisfying to give blame, but a long-term approach tries to create a satisfying life. And it can be much more satisfying to say, yeah, sometimes things go wrong, and that's okay. Often the anxious person doesn't want to hear about things going wrong. They don't want to hear that there's any possibility that things can go wrong. And they're frightened of it. And this is where the parent can step in and say, it's okay. It's okay for things to go wrong. We still beat on. We're okay. And that is a real gift for life for a child, that they realize that they can grow from it, that they're toddling along on that straight line. The negative event happens and they might have learned something from it. That lovely quote there, the right way to wholeness by Carl Jung, the right way to wholeness is made up of fateful detours and wrong turnings. So you can go through a bad event and you might not learn from it. You might feel weakened for it, but you can also go through a bad event and you can feel stronger by it. And generally, it's the quality of your connections when the bad event happens. So if your child is very distraught, you can repair the rupture by being very kind and very loving. And actually, they can come out stronger and more connected with their mommy or their daddy and feel more resilient because they came through than if it was wiped over, pretend it didn't happen, cheer them up and roll on quickly. You know, look at the monster under the rug because they won't want to. Anxious children don't want to, and yet it's probably the most powerful thing you could do. If you can develop kind of emotional intelligence by modeling satisfying way of living, try to find meaning and purpose in their lives. Try to go a bit deeper. When they say they're all stressed, try and say, well, I wonder what could work, what wouldn't work. They'll be very irritable and they might push back, but you're trying to cultivate a self-acceptance. Yeah, this might work, this might work. You're trying to get, it's a kind of a looseness around things. Teaching children how to self-regulate emotions is so important, that you remind them, yeah, I remember you got stressed and you got over it. So we try to do that again, rather than allowing them always going into the meltdown, trying to preempt the meltdown. When I say meltdown, you know what I mean, the distress, the heightened distress. Teaching children to problem solve so that they realize that they can solve a problem and that it's not always the parents or the people in authority who will solve the problem. And so you teach them to work with them. And what I wonder will make us feel better today? Do you think, should you go for a hot bath, or should me and you just kind of have a nice hot drink in the kitchen and a chat? Which would work better, do you think? And they might roll their eyes, but they might go with it. You know, it's amazing how often people do. I do want to remind people that if you can nourish competence, and the way you get competence is through experience. So you get them competent at something by they practice it. You want to get good at music, you practice. If you want to get good at reading, you practice. And competence begets confidence. So the more they do it, the more they'll feel confident. And that will get them to a better place. Now, there's a whole presentation to give on emotional intelligence. So that's just giving you a taster so that you might, you can look me up on social media quite easily. And I have lots of more materials along those that you can find. But the last thing I wanted to finish the talk on is a quote from 2000 years ago, Epictetus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. If your anxious child learns that in a deep level, every one of us know that our parents gave us certain lines, such as don't go outside with your hair wet or whatever it was. We have the ability to really get into our children's head a few really pieces, wise pieces of advice. This is a good one. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And you say it often so that it goes into their mind and they realize it's not about what happens, it's how they react. They are in charge, and that will last them so much further than any of the more short-term strategies. You're trying to get in long-term strategies so that in a long-term way, they might get anxious, they might get nervous, but they might be well able to cope with that as well. Thank you very much.